We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and across this great, beautiful nation 3 times a week on knookmedia.com. Our guest by phone, Roger Roffman, author of a great book, Marijuana Nation. Roger, your website, by the way, I highly recommend. What is that website? So people can...
Well, it's my name, RogerRoffman.com.
Yeah, great website. A lot of information on there. One of the things that I discovered on your website is, and you've been involved in this issue for 40-plus years, you were speaking in front of a Senate committee, and the chairman was saying that the cause of the My Lai massacre in Vietnam was because of pot smoking?
Yeah. So it was Thomas Dodd, the senator from Connecticut, and he had a distinguished history. He served on the Nuremberg Commission after World War II, and he knew a lot about military and military culture, and he was outraged, absolutely outraged, as were most Americans, when the massacre at My Lai was disclosed. And for listeners who don't know, in Vietnam, I don't know if it was 1968, 69. It was right about then. An Army unit that was frankly seeking vengeance for losses that its members had experienced, soldiers who had been killed or wounded. An Army unit went into a village in which there were no combatants. It was simply women and children and some old men, and they massacred what was estimated to be 400 or 500 of them. It was absolutely egregiously wrong for them to have done that, and the unit's leaders ultimately were convicted of criminal activity. When Senator Dodd heard about this, he wondered what could possibly explain American soldiers running amok and running afoul of all of the boundaries and limits of what is okay and what is not okay in combat. And he came up with an answer that made sense to him, and that was that the GIs were smoking pot. And when I heard that he gave a speech in the Senate about that, I wrote to him and I said, "Look, I think you're wrong. I've done some research. I was in the Army as a social worker. I did some research of marijuana smoking by GIs. I think you are jumping to an inaccurate conclusion about the cause of the massacre." He invited me to testify before him. He listened to me when I offered my opinion, but that's about all. I didn't get a sense that I was changing his opinion at all.
Yeah, interesting character Thomas Dodd was. You mentioned, I think on your website, that this book has helped you. I mean, you've been a dealer, a user, a compulsive user. You've been an activist. What did writing this book help you figure out as far as the issue?
I started the book 7-8 years ago, before I retired, and I really thought of the book as a project that would get me through the transition into retirement. And then some people that I knew in the state of Washington began to be talking about legalizing marijuana. And I at first became really anxious about that and anticipated that I would be on the stump opposing it. But then I got to learn more about what they were intending. So writing the book and thinking about the various hats that I had worn as a marijuana researcher, as a user, as a therapist, for a while as a middleman delivering marijuana to cancer patients. I tried to figure out what's really important here, and eventually writing the book and thinking about what role I would play, what stance I would play in this legalization initiative. Things came together for me, and ultimately I decided, Marty, I would be one of the sponsors of the legalization initiative in the state of Washington. There were 10 of us. And I think we did the right thing, but I must tell you, I think it's going to be several years before we really know, have we done what we had hoped we would do when we were writing the initiative and then campaigning for it, or have things gotten worse? I think it's going to be a while before we'll know.
I think time will tell. We're having a conversation with Roger Roffman, author of Marijuana Nation.
Roger, there are numerous types of marijuana, and there's various grades of marijuana. Is all marijuana available in Washington, or are there limits to what people can get, or how much they can get, and what type of marijuana they can get?
Yeah, so you're right. There are all kinds of strains and species, and then products made from the plant. So in Washington now, whether in the medical dispensaries or in the legal retail recreational marijuana stores, consumers have a wide array of choices. They can purchase medibles, medicines that are eaten. They can purchase beverages. They can purchase candies or chocolate bars, confections. They can purchase oils, topicals, and then, of course, they can purchase buds. What is worrisome is, are people learning enough to be informed consumers about what they are purchasing? Some of what's available to be purchased is intended to be a serving for, say, 6 or 8 doses for 6 or 8 different people to use. But every once in a while, you will hear about somebody consuming an entire chocolate bar or an entire brownie without realizing that it wasn't intended to be one serving, but rather 6 or 8 servings, and then experiencing a very unpleasant panic attack that can last for many hours.
Using marijuana for other than health reasons, what would be a reason someone would use it for other than health reasons?
Yeah. I think it's really a good question. Over the 40 or 50 years that we've been doing research on marijuana, we focused on the damages to learning, to memory, damages to health, to safety. We've not focused, in part because of the illegality of marijuana, on could it actually be beneficial? Could it be beneficial, for example, for a geriatric former professor who may occasionally need some help with some sleeping, and or want to enjoy a film or a symphony or a walk in the park with his wife? Now, I'm making this up as I go here, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is we need to learn a lot more about the way in which marijuana can be used safely and do research on it to be able to guide people on what safe use actually entails. We've learned that an alcohol consumer can take certain steps in order to stay within bounds and protect themselves and the people around them. And we need to do more to learn exactly what that needs to be for the consumer of marijuana.
Well, what I want to get across is using marijuana is not going to be considered a sickness like they say alcoholism is. If you decide to use marijuana and you get sick or have problems, that's your problem. And why should the government take care of people?
Yeah, I hear you, and you and I are going to have to kind of agree to disagree. Marijuana is an addictive drug. Alcohol is an addictive drug. There's a certain proportion of alcohol consumers who become alcoholic, and a certain proportion of marijuana consumers who become marijuana addicts, if you will. I think you could take an attitude that says basically you're on your own. I think you could also have an attitude that says, look, it's all in all of our best interests to make sure that resources are available so that alcoholics who need help and want it, marijuana addicts who need help and want it, know where to turn, and can get help. Maybe they'd have to pay for it. Maybe this would not be publicly funded for everybody. But I think my view about it is a bit different than yours. I would want to recognize that addiction occurs. It occurs to a number of substances, tobacco among them, and it would be in our best interest as a society to make sure that treatment programs are available.
I've got some other solutions, but we don't have time to get into those right now.
Well,
is there a guillotine in your solution?
There could be.
Well, Roger, I'm a child of the '60s in Los Angeles, and it was just part of around us all the time. So
sure.
So my attitude might be a little different from Clay's, but anyways, again, the book is Marijuana Nation. I highly recommend it, and I highly recommend the website. This is something that's going to be with us for a long time, and as Roger mentioned, it's already legal in 4 states, so we're going to have to contend with this.
Roger, I argue with my grandson on this stuff all the time. He's brought up presidents that have used it in the past and all the benefits of marijuana, but never brings up the negative side.
Well, again, that's a generational thing.
And he's not alone. And I think what we need to strive for is to be able to talk about the full spectrum of the benefits, the harms, the acknowledge that it's addictive, acknowledge that it can be really a substantial derailing for young people who use it heavily, and still be open to the possibility of legalization or of one type or another. We tend to polarize and either argue that it's harmless, it's just an herb, or that it's toxic and everybody who uses it is doomed. And really the truth is way there in the middle.
Definitely. The book again, Marijuana Nation. Roger, thank you so much for the time.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.